Gallery Row. You've lifted up the restaurants. You've lifted up other galleries. And you've really made a difference here in the community. And so I just wanted you to share with the folks who are going to watch this show what you're all about and your vision for Gallery Row in the future.
Well, 5 years ago when we started this, you were right. People said we were crazy. They thought, well, putting up signs isn't going to make a difference. You really, this area is too blighted. It's got too much history. It's too, downtrodden. But in fact, we were able to prove that this was a really good formula. There's a lot of cheap space to be had, and the area, the city is eager to see this, the history be respected, the architecture be restored, and that's what we've seen happen. So in 5 years, we went from having 3 galleries in Gallery Row to having about 35 or 40 now. So it's a big jump. And the number of people that are coming down for the Art Walk is in the thousands. I think the last estimate was close to 10,000 people. So
it's pretty amazing.
It's pretty substantial.
And how do you think it's made a difference in people's lives?
Well, it's given a context to the renovation of downtown. I mean, real estate, even though it's necessary, is fundamentally kind of boring. You don't go downtown to see real estate unless you're actually looking to move. To giving people a reason and something to do. And for the most part, it's free too. You can walk in, look around. There's no obligation. And like you said, it lifted all the boats. It lifted the restaurants. It brought in stores. It actually really created a street life in downtown, different than the one that we had before, which was a little bit more nefarious. And so it's made people feel safer. It's brought a wider demographic of people to the area.
Right.
And on top of that, the galleries are, for the most part, doing pretty well. So it's helping everybody.
And this is the Downtown Art Park, which is an art event that happens during the Downtown Art Walk. So I'm Stephanie Northcutt, and I work with Citizen LA, which is an arts and lifestyle media company. Citizen LA and the Downtown Art Park represents unrepresented artists, and they can have a space to come in and sell their artwork and gain exposure.
My name is David Saputra. This is a nice place to show some local artists in here. It's great to be in downtown.
So here at the Los Angeles Theater Center, we're the official lounge for the Art Walk, meaning that we're the central hub for getting information. And so the Art Walk is one of those things where we can not only have multicultural programming, but interdisciplinary programming. So there's live performance art, there's music, there's theater. So it's become about art in a much broader sense than just your typical gallery show. And we're here to kind of show how the dynamic theater community in Los Angeles is really thriving in downtown.
Just so that people know, when is Art Walk held?
It's always on the second Thursday of every month. There's a website, downtownartwalk.com, where you can get information. And also the galleries are open, 31 days out of the month. So it doesn't have to be just on that one day of the month. And you can get information about the galleries at bgfa.us.
Well, I really appreciate it, Bert.
Thank you, Jana. We could never have done it without you. So
well,
I want to say
same
thank
here.
you.
I feel the same way about you.
Excellent. Thanks.
Want more information about having a career in traffic and parking enforcement? Visit our website at ladot.org. More than issuing citations, enforcing the way traffic moves.
Since 2001, Council District 9 has encumbered and invested over $52 million for renovations, improvements, and the creation of new recreation and park facilities throughout the district. One such long-awaited project will be at Fred Roberts Park, located at 4700 South Honduras. This densely populated area will soon have a new $5.5 million recreation center to replace the small field house that served many young people and their families in this neighborhood. I took some time out to visit the park during its renovation and had a chat with some of the leaders in this neighborhood who are making a difference. We're here at Fred Roberts Park. I want you to tell all the people who are going to watch this about what motivated you to become active in this park and how you feel your activism has affected and transformed the community. Either one of you can go first.
Go ahead, Patty. Being a mom, my son and the importance of having my son being out in the streets and, have a place to come and run and play and, where he can do it safely. To me, it's really important getting other parents, just as comfortable.
You hold a leadership position in the community. Tell us what your position is in the community.
Well, I'm a member of the park, of the board. And I'm also part of the Laura organization, and participated in the last 2 years on their community resource fair. Bringing together, bigger every year.
Yeah.
Wherever I go, I mention, the importance of community work and just bringing resources to the community. So it's really important to me and to others in the community.
And Adela, the reason that we met started out as a sad one.
Yes.
And it's turned into something incredible. So tell us all about that.
2 years ago, my sister-in-law, Laura Sanchez, was murdered right across the tracks. From that point on, 9 years prior to that, actually, her mother was also murdered. Both of them killed in drive-by shootings. So therefore, we decided to make a change in this community. There's a lot of youth in our family and friends, and they want to change.
We proceeded in developing our design for the new clubhouse. We really wanted your input, and you gave it, and you gave it in a big way, and I think that it goes a long way to improve the project. So why don't you talk about a little bit, just about what your thoughts were as we went through that process.
My son being in Taekwondo classes here, and his master invited me to one of the meetings, and that's how I got involved, going to the meetings and seeing the development, seeing the stages of budget approval and, the design to the building and, just having an input even to the color of the building.
We rallied up the community, came to the meetings, and put together a board and got the project going on. And 2 years later, here we are.
Yeah, we've broken ground.
Broken ground.
It's going to be nice.
It is. It's going to be. I think it's a new beginning for our city and for our community to start taking pride.
But you guys are great, and I really want to say thanks for what you do, because I can't imagine how much more busy you could become, but you seem to make time no matter what. I remember what the park was like before this new facility was built.
Yes.
And what it's like now. What do you feel the biggest difference is?
The difference now is it's really a real good blessing to have something fantastic like this coming to Southeast area. And we do appreciate the community, the parks and recs, and we also appreciate from you.
Oh, well, I appreciate that, but I have to tell you, you and Mrs. McClellan and Mrs. Woods, you all inspire me because you've been at this a long, long, long time, and I know your input and your touch is present here in this building.
Yes, it is.
Because you had a lot of input, and you had a lot of thoughts about what it should look like and how it should feel and how it should serve the community, right?
Yes.
And what were the things that you thought about as they were designing the project?
I thought about how beautiful it would be for the kids and for the quality of life, for the community and the residents.
And the seniors too, right?
And the seniors, yes, everybody. We're planning to have something here later on in the fall, and it would be, the high school, number 12.
Yes.
Which is across the street.
That'll be a big deal.
Yes.
And it got rid of a lot of businesses that were not good for the community.
Yes.
Yeah, so we'll have a new school with lots of young people over here.
Yes.
And the seniors can get involved.
Sure.
Everybody can be active, right?
Yes.
It's made a big difference in the community.
It sure has.
I appreciate you.
Thank you.
Very much. Over the past several years, much has been done to improve park and recreation facilities for the residents of the 9th District. I'm going to take you to one of the best kept secrets in Council District 9. Let's go on a little nature walk. Good morning.
Good morning. How are you this morning.
Thanks for coming out today.
Thank you.
Appreciate you taking the time.
It's a pleasure to have you here.
Thank you. I wanted to talk a little bit about this park and why it's so special, and that it's named after Augustus Hawkins, our former congressman, who lived to be 100 years old, and in various capacities in public service, he represented this area for 56 astonishing years. That's a really long time, and people may or may not know that he was the first African American elected to Congress west of the Mississippi, and so this is an interpretive bust of his likeness. Hopefully when people come through here, they take a minute, they pause, and they try to remember who he was.
What we've been doing here at the Nature Center is promoting Augustus Hawkins, giving the education to the community and to the youth so they know who the park is named after. One of the programs we do have at Augustus Hawkins is the Junior Ranger program. It's the first Junior Ranger program with the Department of Recreation and Parks, so we're very honored to have it here.
Tell me what that means.
They come out and tell them about the mammals, the trees, the lifestyle here, the wetlands, and different areas of the park so they can begin to love the park and want to come here and bring their families.
The park itself was built by the previous council person, Councilwoman Rita Walters. But when I was elected, I put in the wetlands because I felt that it was an opportunity for people to learn more about wildlife and to bring wildlife and greenery and natural habitats to South LA.
We brought community schools and recreation centers in to have a fun day at the park, give them education about nature, and I really think this sparked a new interest in them to come out to see the wetlands and see the other parts of the park.
So is this park special in some way?
This park is real special to me. I believe this is one of the best parks I've worked at. The cactus garden is so beautiful. We really appreciate you having it here. We did have a split in one of the cactus, but we had to preserve it. We planted some of those plants within that same area, and as you've seen, what you have started is just so beautiful, and the whole
multiplies.
Yes, yes.
And I think there's a California walnut tree here.
A lot of the community members come here, and especially the youth, they ask about the walnut tree, and Paula comes out and gives them education about the walnut tree from top to bottom when you plant it, how it grows. So that's a really big education point for us here as well.
So thank you for doing this today and taking the time to talk with us and letting people see what a beautiful park we have right here in South Los Angeles. It's Lawson and Compton, called the Augustus Hawkins Wetlands Park. I'm going to walk over to the wetlands and just say hello to the birds.
Okay.
See who's nesting there these days.
Okay.
And you know, I'm just glad that you enjoy it, and I think the staff's enjoying it too. And we're here with Mr. Wing Tam inside the wetlands here at the Augustus Hawkins Wetlands Park. And this is a fairly new wetlands of less than 3 years old. And it was constructed by my office with the help of sanitation. And I have to say your staff was really, really, really excited and really into this project. And it's a dress rehearsal for an even bigger wetlands at 54th and Avalon. So why don't you tell us about the South Los Angeles wetlands?
I think South Los Angeles wetland is going to be very similar to this wetlands at Hawkins Park. It's just it's a bigger scale. It's going to do very similarly using natural process to treat stormwater as well as increase habitat, and it has a whole bunch of beneficial uses to that area.
Well, this is the first constructed wetlands in a highly dense urban area in the United States. So why don't you tell people what it means to be a constructed wetlands?
It means that basically we take an area, put in a wetland, and in the area that typically doesn't have a wetland, and make it as natural as possible so that we could have multi-benefit habitat ecosystem in that area.
So we created an ecosystem where there was none before. This was a Department of Water and Power pipe yard many years ago, and years ago it was a field. But the thing that's amazing about this is how easily attracted the birds were once, I guess, they realized this was here. And even now I think we can hear some of them if we're quiet. Now, sometimes there is an egret who lives up in the cattails, a male. He's very colorful, and he comes in the late afternoon, and it's really interesting to watch the children watch the birds and to see how excited they get.
I agree completely.
So it must be fulfilling for you, even as an engineer in sanitation, to know that you can create projects that that can change people's lives.
It definitely is very fulfilling to actually see it from the beginning and then at the end, and it's something functioning that's working.
Mm-hmm. So for people who are watching, explain to them how a wetlands works.
Okay. Basically, in a real simple term, what we do is that we take a natural process. Water comes in through a pre-sedimentation, and it comes into a natural planting, trees, water.
Good morning, Los Angeles, and welcome to the City Council meeting for Tuesday, October 18th, 2011. We're here in the John Ferraro Council Chambers, room 340 of City Hall, where we meet every Tuesday, Wednesday, and Friday at 10 a.m. Thank you to the members of the public who have joined us today, as well as those who are viewing us on Channel 35 throughout the city's cable system, and also on the internet at lacity.org. where we stream our live council meetings and archive our past council meetings. We also are available through 2 remote facilities in Van Nuys and San Pedro. If that's closer to where you live, you can always not only follow the council, but remotely testify from those locations as well. I want to thank those council members who are here on time at the outset of the meeting. Council members Huizar and Koretz, Parks and Perry, Rosendahl and Zine. With myself, that is 7 members of our currently 14-member body. We require 10 members to be here to begin the meeting, so we're waiting 3 more members. Following members are now late. If they will please make their way to council chambers immediately. Council members Alarcon, Cardenas, Englander, Krikorian, Reyes, and Wesson. Mr. Labange is excused today on personal business, and he is not expected. But again, council members Alarcon, Cardenas, Englander, Krikorian, Reyes, and Wesson, if you'll please join us so we can begin the meeting. In the meantime, we have agendas available for the public here, and cards are available here in San Pedro and Van Nuys for anybody who wishes to testify from those locations. We have the agendas are split into those items which have already had a public hearing in committee and those for which public hearings have not yet been held. So either way, you can put a card in, but if a committee hearing already had a public hearing, then it would require a motion from council members to reopen that. Thank you, Mr. Krikorian, for joining us as well. We are still awaiting council members Alarcon, Cardenas, Englander, Reyes, and Wesson. Also, our agendas are made available 72 hours in advance, 24 hours in advance for our special agenda items. And if you wish to be heard for our general public comment as well, you can fill out a card, and that is for items that are not on today's agenda, but nevertheless under the jurisdiction of the City of Los Angeles. I know Mr. Zine is speaking to them right now, but want to especially welcome Professor Rafe Sonnenschein and his class to our council chambers as well. Thank you all for being here. I don't know if we can get a shot of the audience from Channel 35, but this is your big chance to be famous. I think. Wait 1 second. It's coming. It's coming. They just have to shift. I know Channel 35 is listening. There it is. All right. So you can go on Channel 35 throughout the City of LA or lacity.org, and we archive that, and you can zoom in on yourself, post it to Facebook, tweet it, let everybody know that you were here, and we appreciate your presence here. Thank you all very much, and we hope this will not be your last visit, even though I know it's your first to our City Council chambers. We are still awaiting a quorum. Go ahead, Mr. Zine, you can continue. Mr. Alarcon, Mr. Cardenas, Mr. Englander, Mr. Reyes, and Mr. Wesson, if you'll please join us, we will begin shortly. Thank you for your patience. have a quorum now, 10 members of our 14, usually 15-member body, which constitutes 2/3. Madam Clerk, if you'll please call the roll, we'll begin the meeting.
Alarcon, Cardenas, Englander, Weezer, Koretz, Krikorian, Labange, Parks, Perry, Reyes, Rosendahl, Weston, Zion, Garcetti. 11 members present and a quorum, Mr. President.
All right, first order of business, please.
Approval of the minutes.
All right, Mr. Weston moves and Mr. Parks seconds without objection. Those minutes are approved. Next order of business.
Commendatory resolutions for approval.
Mr. Weezer moves and Mr. Koretz seconds without objection. Those will be approved as well. It is Tuesday, and we do have a salute to the flag, a Pledge of Allegiance. Professor Sonnenschein, would you be nice enough to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance from the podium? Professor? Would you be kind enough to lead the council chambers in the Pledge of Allegiance from the podium? And if I can ask everybody in council chambers to please rise for our salute to the flag.
Put your hand over your heart. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Professor. Appreciate it. If we can run through the agenda, colleagues, any items that you wish to call special on the agenda today, now would be the time to direct our attention to those. If we can go ahead and take up the first items.
Items 1 through 7 are items for which public hearings have been held. A motion is required for item number 7.
Okay. Anybody wishing to call 1 through 7 special? Mr. Zine?
Hold 7 on the table for an amendment,
okay.
Please.
We'll hold number 7 on the table for Mr. Zine. That leaves items 1 through 6. Colleagues, anybody wishing to call any of those special? If not, let's go ahead and open the roll on items 1 through 6. Please close the roll and tabulate the vote.
13 ayes.
So our ongoing discussion with the class, items 1 through 6 have just been approved. Okay, next items, please.
Items 8 through 26 are items for which public hearings have not been held. 10 votes required for consideration.
Okay, if there's no objection to consideration, seeing none, those are before us. We have now items 8 through 26, which have not yet had public hearings in committee, which means if there's a card from the public, we automatically have hearing. Do we have any cards, Madam Clerk, on those?
Item 18.
Okay, we'll call that special for a card from the public. We will close the public hearings on the other items. Now, colleagues, any items that members wish to call special from items 8 to 26? 8 to 26. If not, let's go ahead and prepare the roll and tabulate the vote.
13 ayes.
Those are all approved, including the ordinances. Ordinances require 12 votes, and we do have 12 members to be passed on a first reading if everybody votes yes. Otherwise, it would go to next week, and you just need a simple majority. But those will go forward, ordinances. Next item, please.
Item 27 is a closed session item. Do you wish to hold that item on the desk?
Yes, let's hold 27. We'll hold that on the desk for closed session. Under the State Brown Act, you can take items that are of a legal nature or personnel matters to discuss. Those are the only ones we can discuss in private for obvious reasons. If it was a legal matter, we wouldn't want to expose our strategy to defend the city, for instance, from a lawsuit. So we will discuss the medical marijuana collectives litigation in closed session, item number 27. And any action that we take that needs a public announcement, we will do back in open session. Next item, please.
On the supplemental agenda, item 28 is an item for which public hearing has not been held. 10 votes are required for consideration.
Is there any objection to consideration? Seeing none, that is before us. Anybody wishing to call the special? Mr. Reyes? Okay. Call that special. All right. That will take us to our general public comment, which is for items not on the agenda, but nevertheless under our jurisdiction. Our first speaker is Richard Kearns. Come forward to the podium. Mr. Kearns in. I saw him a little earlier. We'll hold his card in case he stepped out. Oh, there he is. Mr. Richard, come on down. And then Dr. Tom Williams will follow Mr. Kearns. Good morning, Richard.
Hey, good morning. I'm sort of surprised to be here. I didn't expect to make it back to the City Council. My name is Richard Kearns. I'm a 60-year-old gay man with AIDS. I've had AIDS for 30 years. And I'm a medical cannabis user. I will talk about that later. I did have a poem I just wanted to read this morning because I'm glad to be here and be alive. Woke up this morning wishing I'd thanked you the day before. Woke up this morning wish I'd thank you. Let that bright old dad climb on without me. I'm not quite ready to walk out the door. I'm never ready. You're never ready. We're never ready for the last encore. I'm never ready. You're never ready. We're never ready to be dinosaurs. I'm never ready. You're never ready. We're never ready for that old final soar, hoping to make it out of here before another big uproar. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Richard. Dr. Tom Williams is our next speaker.
Dr. Tom Williams, LA 32 Neighborhood Council and DWP Liaison. We've seen several Thursday afternoon meetings regarding the Citizens Committee for the selection of the Office of Public Accountability's Executive Director. It's going very slow, but it's also going very untransparently. In the first meeting, we were allowed to make public comments on each agenda item as it's indicated on the documents, the agendas. Then it was decided by somebody somewhere that all public comments will be restricted to one time and one time only at the beginning of the meeting, irrespective of the fact that there's no documentation being provided for the agenda items. So where is this going? It seems to be railroaded already. We don't know where it's going. We're not provided with documents. Votes are taken before the public comments. Votes are taken before public comments. Is this the image of transparency that the Office of Public Accountability is going to have? Doesn't sound very good to me. We tried a lot of things, but now it's potential Brown Act. Violations of the Brown Act, which was supposed to be for promoting transparency and public considerations. A vote taken before public comment. Public comments being restricted to the beginning, not the end, for all agenda items. So you get 1 2-minute presentation. So it sounds like we're not going to have much responsibility, and whether it's public or not, I don't believe it will be. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Our next, we'll see if we can find out that information. Thanks for bringing it to our attention. But I think it's Patricia Nix. Is there Patricia Nix? Is our next speaker, and then we'll go to our remote Van Nuys facility, and Miriam Fogler will follow. Good morning.
Good morning. My name is Patricia Nix, and I am here as I'm a homeless resident of Los Angeles and LA County. And I am here to petition the Los Angeles County to help me solve a case that I've been working on for the last 7 years. I'm here to petition the 60-month limit rule for AFDC welfare families. I want to petition that it doesn't work. It has, intentional or unintentional, my family has become a case study, and it doesn't work. You are creating jobs for CalWorks based upon poor families that separate us. You're using foster care as a job base. You're using foster care agencies. You're using kinship care as a base for jobs. And all it does is separate families. CalWorks is an avenue to get welfare families to work. Only if you implement the CalWorks alternatives. 60-month limits cuts the parents off. If parents don't get jobs within the time limit that CalWorks gives them, they're not evaluating, they're not redetermining these families these parents who are not getting jobs, and they're kicking us off of aid, and we are becoming homeless. I've been homeless for 7 years. My daughter is in foster care. She's up for adoption at 17 years old. The psychologists and the psychiatrists knew this would happen in 1998. If you don't give us an extension of aid, if we don't find employment, we go to the streets. This is what all this tents outside is all about. My lawyers, and they know that it's going to happen. This is going to bring confusion. The KinderCare is going to bring confusion, despair, hopelessness. And do you know the African American female is the highest rate of suicide now?
Thank you.
Because of this issue. I need you to help me get my daughter back. There's no reason why she should be up for adoption at 17 years old.
Thank you, ma'am. I'm going to have to, I'm sorry, I apologize, I haven't cut you off. We have to keep it as even at 2 minutes, but thank you for your comments this morning. Miriam Fogler is our next speaker in Van Nuys. After that will be Donna Pearman. Good morning.
I'm wearing a dismayed black here because, let me tell you folks, there's rundown slums everywhere you go. Doesn't matter where you live. Northridge. Englander, get on the ball. She already called your office and told you she needs help because her landlord is a slum landlord. You know, her roof caved in. She had buckets 2 feet wide, 2 feet deep, water coming in. She had to move her dining room table next to her couch. This is a major chutzpah. And let me tell you something. He's a minority, her husband. He's American black. And they're beautiful people. And you have no right to do this to them. The son, he's looking for a job. He's 23 years old. He needs to work. And she's taking him over right now to get him signed up. But she needs housing now. She can't wait. Okay, we need to get on the ball, do something about this now. I'm not going to just sit back and allow this to continue. This is not right. That you're allowing your neighborhoods to decay. Landlords need to be an answer to accountability. They need to keep the walls nice, the floor, the carpeting nice, the roofs done. You people are not keeping these buildings up in this city. And this is an example of what she has to go through, and it's not right that this family has to go through this. They need to get housing now, and I want answers. And I'm looking to you now. What are you going to do about it? I want to know what your answer is. Englander, I need to get her help now, okay, because they're desperate, and they need help now.
Thank you, Ms. Fogler. If you call the office, I'm sure that we'll get assistance for you on that case. And obviously you can do it for the housing things through 311 as well, and they'll direct you to the housing department. Donna Pearman is our next speaker. After that, we'll come back, and Yvonne Michelle Autry will speak here in Council Chambers. Good morning, Donna.
Good morning. This is Donna from Van Nuys. I also want to speak on that housing situation, because the landlord, when they went to them and they said the roof is caving in, nobody should be able to live inside where the roof is caving in, and the landlord turned on them and made it sound like they were the problem, and they said we're not going to pay rent. And so I said, okay, then they're going to be kicked. They're going to kick them out. Now they have to find a place. This is not acceptable behavior. If we had something like such an aid, they always go through and they make sure all the apartments are somewhat up to code. I think that all the apartment buildings should be somewhat up to code. They certainly shouldn't have anything like that. They should take away, I hope they take away the license of these people to have the apartments, to allow a thing to cave on in and not run on in and try to take care of it right away.
That living in mold.
That is essential. That could be dangerous. If the rest of it caved in, it could fall on them and kill them. So this is something that needs to be addressed, and we need to go through all the rest of the apartments and make sure that the rest of the apartments are not in deplorable conditions. I mean, it's not like people are not paying good rent for these places. I mean, these rents are very high that these places are going for. It's expensive for the low middle class. So we need to fix that. And I just want to say real quick about the 169. I still think it's a terrible thing to get rid of the Saticoy bus, because now it means anybody who wants to go along Saticoy, what about the disabled people will now have to go all the way down to Roscoe because they decided that there's not enough ridership. Or just a little bit of ridership is enough to keep that bus going. The disabled people who are along that line, so you got to go by need, not just numbers. So let's look at 169 and possibly bringing it back. I mean, not stopping it. Bye.
Thank you, Ms. Pearman. And just to add a little bit more information for our housing department, you can call 866. It's a toll-free number, 866-557-RENT or 557-7368, and we can get housing inspectors out to the apartment which you mentioned and make sure that the landlord is abiding by any of the requirements of the city. Yvonne Michelle Autry is our next speaker, and then after that will be Arnold Sachs, both here in council chambers. Good morning, Ms. Autry.
Good morning, President Garcetti. Nice to see you again. Hope you're doing well. Very quickly, I'd like to take this opportunity with speaking in solidarity with the citizens that are out on the lawn and encouraging you to observe the rights of all of the citizens and all of the residents of Los Angeles, and not just favoring the wealthy or the affluent or the business class that are now generating such positive revenue, especially in the very successful regentrification of the downtown area. And I'd like to move that in solidarity with the Catholic worker and the right to share food, that there is a continual allowance of food for, or provision of food for the homeless, as well as some transitional housing to remove them off of the streets as regentrification continues out of the wake of potential police brutality. And I'd also like to recommend, especially since Councilwoman Jan Perry would like to be mayor, that if she'd like to redeem her soul, that she should, yes, I would encourage, I would vote for President Garcetti as mayor. I wouldn't vote for Jan Perry. However, I think that she should return the land of the South Park to the people. I think that would, be positive in that redemptive effort and demonstrating that she's really for the working class and the people of all color, not just the wealthy and the real estate developers. And I will continue to encourage her to that end, even beyond the election, because that land, I think, should be returned to the people so that we could discourage gang participation. The youth were involved. We were generating positive cash flow for our communities. All the people were coming together of all races. I know African, Latin, and Native American people that were working on the farm. And that's a real effort in uniting and healing the community, not just the giving away of puppies and kitty cats, which is nice, but work with the people. And this is, I think, a concern I will continue to bring to the council for your consideration. Thank you very much. And
Thank you very much. Appreciate your comments. Arnold Sachs is our next speaker. Mr. Sachs?
This card is for this gentleman behind me.
Sorry?
This public comment card is for this gentleman behind me.
Go ahead, and why don't you speak next?
Yeah, thank you. Good morning. Arnold Sachs. I'm hoping to see some council members or even the mayor at the County Board of Supervisors today. They're going to be discussing AB 109. That's the release of the prisoners into the county. And since the mayor has already said that the state isn't giving any money to the city, what are you going to do about the 4,000 prisoners that come to live in L.A.? The chief of police wants to reallocate 150 officers. Shouldn't there be some kind of discussion? That being said, what happened on Friday? What exactly did you accomplish on Friday with your business-friendly motions you made? The discussion about giving an advantage to local businesses. After all that talk and all that yakking and all that BS, it comes out that local means county and state. So what did you discuss? What did you discover? What did you do to make anything different except give them a 6% more incentive? Didn't anybody know what the ordinance was, that local meant county and state? You spend 2 hours of yapping to accomplish nothing. Now, I don't know. I just read about the county, the auditor, the city auditor saying fraud, waste, and abuse. Now, that may not be abuse. Well, yes, it is. That may not be waste. Oh, yes, it is. But that certainly is fraud. So you're 3 for 3. And that being said, I also understand that the people camped outside are looking to Honest Jan Perry to get $1 million in CDBG funds so that they can make a proposal to tear down the building to the south, that would be this building, and build a stadium. They have offers from the NFL to put a stadium here, would get great usage out of the property.
Thank you, Mr. Sachs. Just as a point of information, it's not city and state, it's just county. It's just county, not state as well. Mr. Lee Glaze is our next speaker. Good morning, Mr. Glaze. Nice to see you.
Good morning, Eric Garcetti, ladies and gentlemen of the City Council. I'm going to campaign for you running for mayor. At any rate, I have an issue with the curbs. I've lived in Long Beach for 57 years, and I was the City Council's worst nightmare when it came to the curbs. And I moved to Hollywood, and I'll be your worst nightmare. As you see, I'm in a chair. Now, this is as a result of a little demonstration that I was in 1965 called the Dr. Martin Luther King Selma March, where some aggressive Klansmen decided to beat the holy hell out of not only me, stomp on my back, but they wound up killing 2 of my friends. I wrote a chapter in my memoir, a soon-to-be-published stage play about it. And it's we really need to get those things done. What you need to do, Mr. Garcetti, and ladies and gentlemen of the City Council, is really think of your handicapped constituents. I went off of another curb. I call them Eric's curbs. But at any rate, I went off of another curb. My back is just killing me. I've got my pain pills in the back here. I'm going to have to take a couple. And my lumbar is inoperable. Going off of a curb is not exactly conducive to comfort. So I really need those taken care of expeditiously. I know you're short on money. Raise taxes, whatever. But there has to be done. Angela said that it was mandate several years ago and that you have a certain amount of time to do it. Well, my God, up and down Wilshire, none. In certain areas. On Hill Street, going to the Furniture Mart, none. No, can't happen. So anyway, thank you so much for your attention. I think my time's up, isn't it? And again, I'm going to talk to Angela and your staff over there about volunteering to get you elected. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Glaze, and nice to see you. Appreciate your comments this morning. That will close our general public comment, and we'll go to, we have to, I think, reconsider one item to amend it, item 24, if we can open the roll, close the roll, and tabulate the vote. And if we could,
13 ayes.
On the line item that has 40,000 on that, make that technical amendment to 65,000 from the citywide GCP funds. Okay, if we can open the roll on that item, close the roll and tabulate the vote.
13 ayes.
That is approved. If we can go to the next item. Mr. Zine, you called 7. You wanted to hold that. Did you want to make one of the motion?
7 ready? 7 ready? 7 is ready? Yeah. Okay, I guess we're ready. We had an amendment to that.
Did you want to move one of the two? That requires a motion. There's 2 committee reports on file.
Okay, well, item 7 on this agenda deals with how we monitor waste, fraud, and abuse, city resources, and we know we've had some situations that have been rather embarrassing to the people of Los Angeles. And if you look at some of the newscasts, there are special investigation reports, and there's more upcoming that are bringing forth stories of waste, fraud, and abuse with LA City employees. The most recent, $43,000 was being asked by a representative from the housing department taking advantage of Korean family members. And we know that recently submachine guns were stolen, property of the city of Los Angeles under the control of Los Angeles Police Department SWAT team. We know that the Department of Building Safety has had some rather scandalous situations, along with the Department of Transportation, Animal Services, and the Los Angeles City Fire Department. And we see that employees are engaging in this activity, which is illegal, unethical, immoral, and it costs the taxpayers their dollars. Employees watching this happen oftentimes turn away and take little to no action to prevent that from happening. We need better accountability, clear guidelines for employees, general managers when it comes to reporting waste, fraud, and abuse. We have the Ethics Commission does a great job, but they have limited staff. We have the city attorney, they have limited staff. We have general managers that in many cases aren't doing their job to control waste, fraud, and abuse. And we know we have representatives from the Comptroller's Office, the investigator, also from the Ethics Commission, which I'm going to have come forward to the table if you would please. Right up here in the center. Don't be shy. Ethics, come on forward too. Wake up. There you go. So we want to require all departments to report to the controller once an internal investigation has been initiated. Once they start that investigation of an allegation, we want the controller's office to be notified. And currently the code encourages departments to report waste, fraud, and abuse, but it's not mandatory. We need a central unit for allegations of waste, fraud, and abuse, and that could be in the controller's office, to make sure that we're doing this in a proper fashion to hold people accountable and responsible, creating a database of complaints. Controller can clearly see if there are isolated incidents or bigger problems citywide, need for an audit of that particular department. And sometimes the situation will go from one department to another department, and this costs, again, millions of dollars. Online curriculum for all employees. We now have it for ethics training. We have it for sexual harassment. We have it for other programs. We need to have online curriculum for employees, waste, fraud, and abuse, as we do with the other classes that are required. And so I want to move the Personnel Committee report, which represents the goal of this, and we want to make an amendment that we would ask the Personnel Department to try and come up with some incentives, because if people don't report, we know that the problems occur. We try to come up with some incentives for those that do report. We know that people who report graffiti, there's a $1,000 reward. I'm not suggesting a $1,000 reward for bringing that forward, but some incentive that would compel employees to do that. I know in the Los Angeles Police Department, if you fail to report misconduct, there are consequences for you as an employee. Even though you're not engaged in misconduct, if you become aware of it and you fail to report it, there's consequences and disciplinary process with the Los Angeles Police Department. We need to have something to bring this forward, because we're talking about millions and millions of dollars, and the scandals continue. And speaking to some investigative reporters just last week, there are more stories they're going to be showing on local television stations where city employees are not doing what they're supposed to do, and again, it'll be embarrassing. So waste, fraud, and abuse needs to come to an end. We can't tolerate it. We can't afford it. And hopefully this measure will bring about accountability, responsibility, and put an end to this problem that we've had. And I'm going to turn it over to the Controller's Office and the Ethics Commission first, because you're smiling, and then we will hopefully vote to approve this. A long time in coming. I want to commend the Controller's Office for bringing this about, and the lone investigator who single-handedly tries to handle this matter. So let's start with ethics, and then we'll go to the Controller's Office, please.
Good morning. Heather Holt for the Ethics Commission. We support this motion. We are all in favor of bringing to light the things that are troubling in terms of the way the public dollars are spent, and we support this. What we do with our whistleblower program is separate from what is handled through the Controller's Office with waste, fraud, and abuse, and we do work with the Controller's Office as well as the LAPD to share information when there is crossover between the different jurisdictions. So we think this would be another good step in that direction.
Because we talk about waste, fraud, and abuse, and it's a term that really doesn't connect. We want it to connect. We want to understand to the employees the consequences, and the taxpayers that we're very responsible, and we recognize the waste that this causes in tax dollars and services. And from the Controller's Office?
Brian Young, Special Investigator with
Brian, can you bring that mic closer?
Brian Young, Special Investigator with the Controller's Office, Fraud, Waste, and Abuse Unit. Thank you for having us. There is an ordinance in place at this time, and basically it says that we're expected to receive voluntary compliance on fraud, waste, and abuse. But the purpose, as you had mentioned, was to mandate that each department report these matters to our office. It's very important that you have an independent watchdog that has the professional qualifications to do these investigations, rather than each department handling, their own internal investigations. It's also important that, that the Controller's Office is aware of issues, especially in regards to, matters that we've all recently read in the newspaper, to make sure that we understand what the matters are, and that we have a centralized database that we can go and look at, the underlying reasons why this actually occurs. I mean, the main purpose for, the fraud unit is to protect our city resources. If we know beforehand, we can look at the problems and the issues. We can look at what allowed this to occur, what were the breakdown in controls, and basically that's the reason for strengthening the ordinance as well as having citywide training for everybody to basically understand, what is their duty to report, what is fraud and waste, and how they should go about reporting it.
Thank you. And I know what we want to do is have that training for all city employees, have mandatory training so they'll understand what it's about and the consequences if they don't. And then hopefully the personnel department, working with the Controller's Office and Ethics, can come up with that and mandate that the folks do that. When people get employment with the City of Los Angeles, they come in with these wonderful ideas and goals, and all of a sudden some go down the wrong path. And the wrong path leads to waste, fraud, and abuse, and an extreme cost to the taxpayers. But what I really find sad is that in the next few weeks we're going to see more stories on our local television stations, investigative reporters bringing forth more examples of waste, fraud, and abuse in the City of Los Angeles. And it's a sad commentary that with all the situations that have taken place, this still continues, and we need to put a complete end to it. So hopefully this measure will bring about an end to that, and people understand they work for the City of Los Angeles. It's an honor to work for the taxpayers, and they should appreciate that and not commit waste, fraud, and abuse. So with that, Mr. President, if there's any other, go ahead.
Yes, thank you. Heather Holt again for the Ethics Commission. I think there were two different reports that were considered, one by the Personnel Committee and one by Audits and Governmental Efficiency. And there was an inadvertent typo, I believe, in what was addressed by Audits and Governmental Efficiency regarding the code section that the waste, fraud, and abuse training should be listed under. The correct version is in the Personnel Committee report.
Okay, I sit on both committees, so we'll go with the correct version.
Okay, great.
We don't want to put something that's not correct. So we want to submit personnel. Okay, we want to submit the personnel report that has the correct numbers, and we will chastise our staff for putting the wrong numbers in. But I'm glad we caught it.
Thank you very much. No chastisement necessary.
Well, waste, fraud, abuse, and mistakes.
Yeah.
But innocent mistakes. Okay. Mr. President, thank you.
Excuse me, Mr. President, is there a second to Mr. Zine's motion to move the Personnel Committee report?
The second for Mr. Zine's motion to move the Personnel Committee report?
I pressed my button.
Ms. Perry?
Not yet, but we will see. Ms. Perry?
I pressed my button.
Yes.
Yeah, I wanted to ask the speakers assembled at the table, and I know we have ethics and we have the inspector from the Controller's Office, correct?
Correct.
Yeah. So what if maybe you can address it first. What is the difference between what we have now and what Mr. Zine is proposing, and what prevents people from reporting waste, fraud, and abuse now other than their own behavior or lack thereof?
Well, right now the big difference is that it's not mandated, it's expected. It's expected voluntary compliance with the ordinance, but we're trying to strengthen the ordinance to actually make it a mandate.
So if it's mandated and somebody doesn't comply, what's the penalty?
We are actually working with the City Attorney's Office to figure out what the correct language should be in regards to, the punitive measures.
All right, and then if somebody doesn't report it now and you conduct an investigation down the road and you find out that they withheld information or, circumvented their responsibility as say a manager or a supervisor, what's the penalty for that now?
Well, there isn't really a penalty right now. I mean, right now, like we said, it's expected cooperation with the ordinance. I mean, obviously you're supposed to follow it, every charter, every ordinance, that we have. But at this point in time, there's really no penalty for not reporting that type of information.
So what we mandate, if we mandate it or work on mandate language now, but we don't have that companion piece of enforcement with penalty, because that's something we have to have. Otherwise, we're not going to be in any different position than we are now. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct. That's why we need to, make sure that we coordinate with the City Attorney's Office to gather the appropriate language and to discuss, what the enforcement options are in regards to a violation of the ordinance.
Okay. Because I'm more interested in voting on something that has both sides of the equation figured out before we move forward on that.
Thank you.
The mandate, the mandate language, and the companion what happens if you're mandated and you don't comply, so we know what we're dealing with.
Mr. Zine.
Well, the department general managers do have the option to bring charges, administrative charges, which would go to the Civil Service Commission for review. I mean, there is a disciplinary process in place within the city family. Not only the police department, fire department, all departments have that ability to bring charges, and if they're violating the ordinance, not reporting, and they should have knowledge of, such as the Department of Water and Power situation where they were going to strip bars and drinking and alcohol in city vehicles. Engaging in that is one issue, but not bringing that forward. But the departments currently have the administrative ability to bring disciplinary charges, and that disciplinary charge can then go to the Civil Service Commission for a full hearing and adjudication. So we do have the negative side of it. What we're trying to do is make it mandatory. You must report it, and if not, there's consequences. And on the incentive side, with the personnel department, to build in some incentives on the positive side, and at the same side, Ms. Perry asked for some teeth to it. That would be the disciplinary process, which currently exists in the city charter, where general managers can bring employees up for discipline. They can appeal it through the process to the Civil Service Commission. So we do have the mechanism already in place, but there's not the requirement that they bring forward that information, that they report that information, and then compile the information, what we're trying to do with the Controller's Office. If you can respond to Ms. Perry's concerns.
It's a fraud with City Controller. You are correct. There is a disciplinary process in place if employees violate any city policies, procedure, or ordinance. We also have processes in place once we start our preliminary inquiries and investigation, and we'll realize that there is a intentional criminal wrongdoing. We work with district attorneys, DA's office, city attorney, that would refer the matter to them for proper prosecution.
And if there's a crime involved, then obviously a felony, a misdemeanor, could go to the city attorney, the district attorney for a criminal prosecution. We've done that in the past. But if it is shy of a criminal offense, we still have that option to do internal discipline, and that employee does have that ability to take that to the Civil Service Commission for the ultimate review.
That is correct, yes.
So I think that responds to Councilmember Perry's concern about having some teeth in the matter, that if they don't do it, but what we will require is that they now report it, and that the general managers report it to the Controller's Office so they can keep a tracking system. Currently, they don't have a tracking system to know what's happening with the different allegations of waste, fraud, and abuse.
I also want to mention that the purpose that we are asking for reporting directly to us is more about prevention, is more about knowing what situations going on, so the controller has the opportunity to establish proper controls, recommend proper controls for other departments for the similar situations, and hoping that we can stop this type of activities even from happening.
And I think that the activity continues, and as you're going to see in the next couple of weeks on the investigative reports on local TV stations, continuing saga of waste, fraud, and abuse, which outraged the public, totally outrages the public.
Thank you, Mr. Zine. Mr. Krikorian.
Thank you, Mr. President. I certainly support Mr. Zine's efforts to try to create additional training, additional oversight, and additional accountability, all very important. The challenge that I'm having with this is that very often I think waste, fraud, and abuse has become this cliche term that's used to criticize just about everything in government at one time or another. And so if we're going to have a mandate of reporting waste, fraud, and abuse, I think it's important first that we know what waste, fraud, and abuse is. Certainly fraud is a crime. I think we all have a very clear sense of what fraud is. But when we start talking about waste and abuse, those often get into the area of policy decisions. One person's waste is another person's, important expenditure. And so, first of all, I guess I'd like to ask, do we even have a definition within the code of what waste, fraud, and abuse is that we can train people on? If we're going to mandate reporting, what does waste, fraud, and abuse mean?
Actually, we've done fraud awareness training throughout the city. We've already trained about 25 different departments.
Yeah, and fraud's easy. Is there a definition of waste, fraud, and abuse?
Yes. Yes, basically the difference between fraud and waste. Fraud, you have intent. It has to be some type of intentional act. There also has to be a loss. So those are the two main elements, that there's a loss and that there's intent. Waste is a little bit different. I mean, you don't always have the element of intent, but I can give you, we've done, a number of recent reviews where we've looked at city procurement contracts where, for example, we had a city department that basically wasted about $1 million on city equipment that they were not utilizing, city equipment that was not working, city equipment that they could have bought for $1 and they decided to lease it for an additional 5 years.
So I guess my question is there a definition in the law of waste and abuse? Because what if those vehicles were purchased at a certain price and if we'd shopped around we could have gotten them at 80% of the price? Would that have compelled a mandatory reporting by somebody because it's wasteful because we could have got it 20% cheaper? These are very gray areas, and if you're going to put a mandate on our employees, this ordinance must include a definition of what they're mandated to report. Without that, it's unenforceable and it's abusive, actually, of the process, I think. If we're not telling our employees what constitutes waste and abuse, then I don't see how we can mandate them to report it. Fraud is an easy one. That's a criminal act. Of course we know what fraud is, but I guess what I'm saying is if we're going to go forward with an ordinance like this that has a mandatory reporting provision, the ordinance itself must contain clear delineation of when that reporting obligation kicks in. What is waste? What is abuse? Because without that, I think we're putting our employees in an impossible situation, and we're leaving that system itself susceptible to being abused and to be used for retaliation and all sorts of other things.
Ms. Perry.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. I'd like to ask the folks here at the middle table just to give some consideration to the situation as a case study of the housing department employee, and I introduced a motion today to come and report to us on any outreach and investigation efforts that the housing department has made to determine whether there are any other victims of this alleged bribery scheme as reported in the newspaper, and for Korean-speaking folks and any other folks who may or may not have been victimized, and to be able to come in and do that on the public record. And so this employee, from what I understand, because we didn't get a report from housing, was charged and it was adjudicated. But there's nothing that prevented the housing department, nor there was nothing to mandate the housing department. But what we're talking about is a culture of behavior where people don't feel compelled to report something. Is that how you would look at the current situation?
Well, I mean, obviously there was a crime that took place, but one of the other issues is there was probably a breakdown of controls also. Mm-hmm. You look at how can, I believe this person is a clerk typist, so it's not only the crime that takes place, but what you learn from it. You look at, okay, how did this take place? You look back. You look at what were the acts. How was this person able to receive the funds? Was there appropriate oversight? How long did it go on for? So there's a lot of things that, if you're a professional investigator, these are the types of questions that you're going to ask. You may not be able to prevent all these types of things from happening, but one of the reasons to have a centralized investigative location like the fraud unit is to make sure that you look at the broader picture. You look at all of the different city departments, and if you are able to identify, what the breakdown was, you can go ahead and you can fix that, not only for that department, but for other departments as well. So that's why it's real important to have, the information brought to a centralized location where you have professional investigators that know how to do these types of matters. Now, your professional investigators are differentiated from professional investigators with ethics, differentiated from investigators at the DA's office? And in what way are they differentiated? And what's a different set of skills? Or well, I mean, I could talk about the investigators for the controller's office. Mostly have a background in doing both criminal and administrative internal investigations. But do they come with a specific expertise in municipal finance or
or
Yes.
something like that?
Yes. Most of the investigators have a financial background as well, which is very important. I mean, especially when you're looking at, city resources and basically waste of city funds or fraudulent acts regarding city funds.
Mm-hmm.
So they do have qualifications that might not be apparent for another investigator, might not have those financial skills as well.
Mm-hmm. So what you're talking about is a shift in focus, not an addition of staff or an increase in operating costs of a department.
Well, I mean, obviously, our department has been cut quite a bit, like every other city department, and possibly down the road we may be seeking additional resources because our investigative staff is very small at this point in time. So that might be something to consider.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Mr. Zine.
Well, thank you, Mr. Wesson. I will try to bring closure to this if I can. What we're asking for is to move forward with this measure, come back with an ordinance, answer the questions from Mr. Krikorian, Ms. Perry, and I would accept Ms. Perry's comment as a friendly amendment, and when the ordinance comes back, to also report back with possible disciplinary action for those who may have been involved and did not report. As far as the definition of waste, fraud, and abuse, I'm sure there's a definition somewhere in the city administrative code, but the questions that are being proposed by my colleagues, if we can bring those back in the ordinance, check with the city attorney, and come back with a comprehensive ordinance that addresses all these issues, because what we're asking for today is that the folks from ethics, the folks from controller's office, city attorney's office, work together to come up with an ordinance that we can put into place, that we can have the information, have the training, the expectation that people will do this in a proper fashion. I just want to add, we see what's happening currently in the LA County Sheriff's Department in the jail section. One scandal after another scandal after another scandal. What we're trying to do is avoid that here in the city of Los Angeles. That's our goal. So all great questions from Mr. Krikorian, great questions from Ms. Perry, but the goal is if we can feed those in, digest those with the city attorney's office, and then come back with an ordinance which will go back to committee. We'll come back here, and this is the first step to try and bring some closure to the continuing saga of waste, fraud, and abuse. So that would be, if I could get approval from my colleagues on that, I think we will be moving in the right direction on this particular issue and answer the questions of waste, fraud, and abuse. We can't continue to tolerate the waste, fraud, and abuse that we've seen come forward in the media reports, and God knows what else has happened that we're not aware of. Thank you, Mr. President.
Ms. Perry.
Another thing that I wanted to add is, we're trying to deal with the behavior of our own employees, but I think we can do something very simple that doesn't require an amendment on language, and that is to put information out on the counters for people who may come and interact with housing, with building and safety, with other departments in the various languages, saying if you believe an employee is, however you want to structure it. If somebody's asking you for money, particularly if it's cash, to be able to accomplish a task that you're entitled to have done as a resident of the city of Los Angeles, you need to report this immediately to XYZ number or whatever the number is, an ethics commission or DA, or however you choose to do that. You have to make some recommendations to us as to what's most efficient. But we can do that now, and we can do that easily. And I'd like to, actually, I'll draft up something and ask the CLA to put something together so we can get that going right away, and we don't even have to wait for this amendment, because we need to teach our residents and those who interface with the city of Los Angeles that if you detect this kind of behavior, you need to know up front that it's wrong. You need to reject it and not allow yourself to be victimized. And then we need to give people some place to call it in so they can report it and get some help.
Thank you. Mr. Krikorian.
Thank you very much, and thank you, Mr. Zine, for those comments, and I'll look forward to seeing the ordinance when it comes back to work on that further. But further to Ms. Perry's comments is very similar to what I was just going to ask. For the sake of the public who's watching this right now, when the public sees what it perceives to be waste, fraud, or abuse, what are the current reporting options what are the best reporting options that the public should exercise? What should the public do when they see? I had a constituent the other day who was telling me a story about seeing somebody sleeping in his truck or something. So what does a constituent do in those circumstances?
Actually, we do have a fraud hotline, not only for city employees but the public as well. On the controller's website, they can report it through the website.
And can you give the number in the website, please?
I can. The telephone number is 1-866-428-1514, and the website is lacity.org/controller, and there's an icon to report that directly to the fraud hotline. And that's 24 hours, 7 days a week, so they can report it anytime.
And Ethics Commission also has a hotline?
Yes, we are required by the charter to maintain a whistleblower hotline, and I can give the information for anyone who suspects violations of the ethics laws or lobbying laws or campaign finance laws. It's also available, as the controller's is, by phone and by website. The phone number is 800-824-4825, and the website is ethics.lacity.org.
Thank you. So, colleagues, I, for one, am going to put that information on my office's website. I would suggest that we all do that and help make it as easy as possible for the public to make these reports. Thanks very much.
Thank you very much. If no other members wish to be heard, we've had amendments that have been accepted as friendly. There is still not a second on the personnel report that Mr. Zine moved. Is there a second now as amended? Mr. Rosendahl seconds. With that, let's go ahead and take a vote. Please open the roll, close the roll, and tabulate the vote.
13 ayes.
That is approved. Thank you. Next item, please.
Item 18, call special for cards.
Dr. Williams, would you like to come forward? Is Dr. Williams here? I think he has left. We'll close the hearing on 18. Please prepare the roll and tabulate the vote.
13 ayes.
That is approved. Next item, we can go to 28, I believe. And then we'll come back for our closed session 27. Mr. Reyes called that item special.
And I believe there's also cards, Mr. President.
Okay. We'll take cards first. Richard Kearns, if you'd like to come forward on item number 27. Oh, sorry, not 27. I'm sorry, Mr. Kearns. We're going to take that afterwards. 28 is next, and that's Dr. Williams. Dr. Williams, would you like to come forward on item 28? After that will be Michael Pell.
Item number 28. Sounds familiar. Okay, Arizona. Dr. Tom Williams, LA 32 Neighborhood Council, and a 25-year-old spouse for, 25 years we've been married. However, we can't go to Arizona easily because if we drive over there and if we're stopped, my wife has to carry her American passport because she doesn't look like me. She looks different from me. She looks like other people that might be stopped and asked for their identification. Nowadays, can you even trust any state identification? I doubt it. So what we're dealing with is how do you emphasize to people that the Arizona law is wrong? You only can do that by either stopping the transfer of funds, the transfer of people, resources to such a place. I lived around South Africa for a while. Not in South Africa, but around it. And the same problems always occurred. How important is it to us, LA, to emphasize to Arizona that their law is wrong? Thank you.
Thank you. Michael Pell is our next speaker.
Good morning. My name's Michael Pell, and I must respectively disagree with my colleague, Ms. Dr. Williams. First off, I think this is a no-brainer. You're going to get a lot of great ideas from attending this conference. and I oppose the boycott in the first place because I think the law is right. I would also like to point out that a boycott hardly ever works. In fact, I don't know of any boycotts that have really worked, even the grape and lettuce boycotts, as well intentioned as they were. I'd also like to mention, for the benefit of Ms. Vogler, if she's still in Van Nuys, that her friends could also go to Chabad at 741 Gailey Avenue, which I proudly work on their telethon and support very much. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Pell. Mr. Reyes.
Thank you, Council President. Colleagues, I first want to thank you for your support of the boycott. I think it's important to understand what this legislation is doing to a whole community, a whole population, not only in this state but throughout the country. As we've seen other states take on brutal, mean-spirited laws that incarcerates people because they look like me, because they're brown of skin, or are suspect of not being a citizen, when in fact we are Americans, regardless of our color of our skin. National League of Cities is an organization of cities. Phoenix, Arizona is one of the major cities in Arizona that fought against SB 1070. The mayor's life was threatened, had a bodyguard 24/7, and they essentially were in a place where they came to Riverside a year or so ago, where the National League of Cities board decided to go to support Phoenix and all cities in this country so they can figure out ways, educate themselves in strategies legally and economically to fight state laws that would do this to their communities within cities. It is a teaching moment, but experience has it that the media has a hard time looking at these complicated issues because it works in sound bites, and this is not a sound bite issue. So I took the initiative to put this forth because of our boycott. But in speaking to my colleagues, and I thank you for reinforcing the need to have this boycott. To me, when you look at what creates this type of legislation, and I put an article on your desk, there's an organization called FAIR that met in Washington, D.C., that was made up of conglomerates that are in the prison building industry. They targeted millions of dollars to different state legislators who would be willing to take on this language. They crafted the language. SB 1070 was crafted by these conglomerates who wanted to create the opportunity to build prisons, and to justify those prisons, they want and needed to incarcerate people. And those people became the immigrants. That is a national disgrace. That is a whole dynamic that we need to understand as voters, as leaders of our communities, so that we can stand up for the most vulnerable, the children and the families who are being stripped apart or are being deported because of the color of their skin. That is not the America that we have fought for. I bring this to your attention because it is the motivation for my actions today. But in having conversations with my colleagues, I do not want to put this institution as being viewed as being wishy-washy, that we're inconsistent. We need to keep the boycott. It has been effective. There's a letter that was written by several companies asking Arizona state legislators to stop the mean, the ugly language that has been hurting them economically. So at this time, colleagues, I would move to receive and file this because I believe in this boycott. I believe it's made a difference. And I thank you for this stance and sticking to the principles of looking out for the most vulnerable communities, not only in the city, in the state, but in this country. As the second largest city in this country, we have made an impact. And for that, I thank you. So I move to receive and file.
Thank you, Mr. Reyes. Mr. Huizar is our next speaker.
Thank you, Mr. Reyes, for raising this issue. And I know that you continue to be one of the council members that are passionate about making sure that the discriminatory laws that are promulgated in other states, we do whatever we can to try to fight those back. And one of the most effective means we could do that is through our boycott. But it does raise a question, as you brought this up, and that is, if I could ask the CLA when we, Mr. Jerry Miller, I know we've proposed to have some policies in place as to when we can and cannot give some exceptions to the boycott. I just would like to ask, where is that policy? When is it coming to council? Are you aware of the types of exceptions we can give and when we could see that in council?
Well, at this point, it's being interpreted very broadly. We're still working with City Attorney's Office. I mean, the bottom line is an exception to the policy at this point would be up to the council. But with the expectation that there'll be an ordinance in place, there's work to be more specific and identify the situations in which it applies.
So up until we get that ordinance in place, in the meantime, it's up to the council to provide exceptions, but we don't have that in place, and that will allow us, when we have that in place, to look at a set of criteria that we could compare any proposed exception to. But at this time, it's very broad and general, and I hope that we could expedite that ordinance coming to council. I will certainly do my best to talk to the City Attorney's Office to see how quickly we could get that over here so that we have criteria by which we could compare these types of proposed exceptions. Thanks.
Excuse me, Mr. President, is there a second to Mr. Reyes' motion?
Second.
Yes, Mr. Huizar seconds. Mr. Cardenas.
Jerry, hold on. I think I want to clarify something. We had a resolution calling for a boycott of Arizona, correct?
Correct.
And what Councilmember Huizar was talking about is a motion of formal policy on delineating, for example, in RFP processes or what have you, hiring of companies or firms to do business for the City of LA. Mr. Huizar was talking about a motion, a formal motion, delineating exactly what the criteria would be as to whether or not a company would be affected by that boycott in doing business with the city.
Yes.
Okay. So therefore, if we had, say, a contract or something like that coming before us, and issues are brought up as to whether or not the company is from Arizona, or whether they have a certain number of employees from Arizona, or whether or not the work is being done in Arizona, or et cetera, all those different things, if that was brought up, and at the end of the day, the council decided not to give that contract or to actually award that contract with or without those questions, I don't think that would be considered an exemption. That would just be a policy decision. But once we have a motion in place, then if we were to award, say, a contract, say a corporation was based in Arizona, all evidence is that they're an Arizona firm, then that would be considered an exemption.
Well, again, I think, as you correctly point out, the terms of the ordinance would identify exactly what you're talking about. Is it headquartered? Is it decisions being made? Is it number of employees? So that wouldn't be considered an exemption. My understanding is that there is, however, travel to Arizona is prohibited. So I suppose the ordinance might, and we're looking into whether there are situations in the ordinance that would be allowable, but at this point, that is completely prohibited.
Or let me clarify a little bit better, hopefully better. So right now, if we were to award a contract or something and some questions were made as to whether or not that corporation was from Arizona or they had certain employees there, et cetera, it would be an exemption to the resolution, not a formal, it wouldn't be an exemption to formal policy which is different when we pass a motion.
Correct.
Okay, because we have resolutions and we have motions.
Right.
And a motion, could you explain for the public what the basic, if it could be basically explain the difference between a motion that has been passed and has now been enacted versus a resolution that's been passed?
Well, it's a little more complicated, I think, than...
It's not easy to surmise it, but...
Well, there are motions that are generally they're instructions to do something. A resolution is an official position, and then you have ordinances which are codified in city law.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Alarcon.
Council members, I want to stand to applaud Mr. Reyes for noting and filing this motion. As with most resolutions, the message is as important as the substance of the resolution. In this particular case, because Mr. Reyes has been a champion on the issue of the boycott of Arizona, introducing the motion, and ironically, he also serves as a past board member of the National League of Cities representing the city. I absolutely know that he is committed to the cause and would not have even contemplated this motion if he did not think it was in the interest of changing the law in Arizona. But the fact is that no matter how many arguments you can put in place to support that notion, there's no way to change the message that would get out into the media. It would appear to be a contradiction. It would appear to be ironic. It would appear to be working against the Arizona the boycott that we moved on before. So it was a very difficult position for Mr. Reyes to be in, but I think he's taking the correct action in noting and filing this because we want the message to be consistent, that we are opposed to the Arizona law, and we believe that it is in the interests of the United States of America to move in a different direction.
Mr. Reyes.
What I do appreciate is the fact that any exemption has to come before this council based on the verbiage of the resolution. Would that be accurate?
Yes.
And as such, we have been consistent. Again, these are those detailed issues that we don't find in the media, but within that resolution, we did identify public safety, education, and other items that allowed us to contemplate an exemption. And that's what is brought to this body. And I know we have been effective because we have altered dollars that were destined for Arizona that did not go. And the ones that did was because of the parameters we set in that resolution. So we will continue to do that until we find an ordinance that gives us the specificities that would help us guide the commissions and every other body that's in the city. Would that be accurate?
Yes.
So I want to again thank you for your hard work. I know the city attorney is trying to get that out, but I also know they've lost almost 30% of the personnel. There's a lot of work on their table. We keep pushing, and we hope we can get something very soon. Thank you.
If I could
Yes, Mr. City Attorney.
The ordinance has been submitted a few months ago.
Mr. Rosendahl.
Yeah, just a deep breath. The League of Cities decided to hold a conference in Arizona, correct?
Correct.
And what was their discussion about when they made that decision? Did they take into account some of the issues that people here have taken into account, and how did they respond to it?
Well, they did. I wasn't actually at the meeting. Perhaps Mr. Reyes can
yeah, I'd like to know from Mr. Reyes exactly what the League of Cities did, how they did it. And frankly, my second question is the law in Arizona, how is it impacting people that, feel it's abusive?
Well, it was a very difficult discussion. It went almost 4 hours. It was held in Riverside. It was the Executive Board of National League of Cities, approximately about 50 members of a 1,400-member organization, and they're all cities. Mayor of Phoenix showed up and said, help me and my city fight this state law. We have put everything on the table to make sure this ugly law, the mean law, does not pass. And by boycotting us as a city, by not going to their city as a conference, would be very punitive and would weaken their ability to fight this law. So all the cities, it was a very, very hard decision. But in the end, this teaching moment that would provide cities, mayors, aldermen, council members, commissioners of all these cities would learn from this conference and how economically this is hurting municipalities, counties, and states when you go after people the way this punitive law does. It speaks to how un-American we can be if we allow corporate greed that want to manipulate the legislative process by allowing and justifying the creation of these prisons to incarcerate children and families. And that has become the focal point of this conference. It has several issues it's addressing. It spent about a good year going through research, publications that will be dispersed at this conference, and how we help the immigrant community, how we help assimilate, how we look at job training, education, and all that will be dispersed at this conference.
So then basically, in a certain way, by having the League of Cities there, you're protesting a state law, but putting a lot of visibility on it with mayors from all over the country saying how they feel about it.
Exactly, and given what Georgia has done, what's happened in, I believe, it's Arkansas, Alabama, Georgia, I mean, there are several states who were targeted by this fair committee, where they pump millions of dollars to build these prisons, who are basically adopting the same language that was introduced in Arizona.
Okay, so my first question is clearly League of Cities sees this as a symbolic protest and a real protest in many senses.
Right.
Okay, second question is that law that they put into effect, have we seen the results of that in terms of certain people being stopped and abused and put in incarceration and those kinds of things?
Yes, there are horrendous experiences where, in some cases, people who are not even police officials are identifying and accusing others of not being Americans because of the way they look and calling the police on them. It's a heinous situation. It echoes back to the 20s and 30s where you have this harshness of how we were discriminatory against whole communities because of their color of their skin and or because of their mannerisms or because they have an accent or because they don't dress like the mainstream. They become victims of those who would persecute them for being different.
Okay, and my last question to you, you've been a national player with the League of Cities. You've served on the executive committee. You've been dealing with immigration issues significantly for years. Have we made any progress on this? Everybody, politician, talks about a pathway to citizenship and we got to do this and that, but actually I don't see anything done. Do you sense that, or where are we as a nation on the issue?
What's unfortunate is that the federal government has yet to provide a comprehensive law and or policy. It has allowed for the states to go on unbridled with these kinds of mean-spirited laws. And I'm just hoping that the president is able to finally acknowledge the need for federal law that will give us an approach that is consistent with civil rights and with the ability to grasp the uniqueness of our great country, which is made up of immigrants.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. President.
Mr. Parks.
Thank you, Mr. President. Let me just ask, I was under the impression that we're going to head towards an exemption. What happens to those who have already registered and all that other good stuff, expecting that? How does that impact the travel?
Well, the deadline to cancel the registration was actually yesterday.
Yeah.
We will see if we can get the registration refunded. There shouldn't be any issues with hotel bookings or flight bookings. The only issue might be the refund of the registration fee.
Okay, so the issue is receiving and filing means the basically we're back to square one as far as not going to Arizona.
That's right.
All right. And so the other issue is, what about personal expense if you've registered your hotel and stuff like that?
Well, that'll have to be canceled right away, but with the cancellation policies, it's far enough advanced that should not be an issue.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Zine.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. Reyes has assumed command of the Board of Directors on National League of Cities, where I was a member of the Board of Directors and worked on immigration reform with National League of Cities and testified in Congress on immigration and how we can bring about a transition from our current process in America to something more reasonable. There was a committee established with National League of Cities. They've taken an official position, and it seems that we'll hear in the federal issue goes up and down like a roller coaster. Sometimes they're talking about it, sometimes they're not. Right now it's on the back burner, and it's not even lukewarm. And that's one of the tragedies, that we in this city worked with cities around this country to come up with a comprehensive plan on how to do immigration that would work for all the communities in the United States. And National League of Cities has that on their agenda. It remains on their agenda. Mr. Reyes attended some of the meetings that we held here and other places regarding this issue. I'm no longer on the Board of Directors of National League of Cities, but I know Mr. Reyes and his concern to see this come about successfully. Many, many elected officials throughout this country are concerned about the immigration issue, but it's so bogged down in the federal government with the political parties fighting each other that I don't see it happening in this administration. It didn't happen in the previous administration, and God knows when it's going to happen, but it's something that needs to come about. But we had a coalition representative of cities across America. We had Latino, African American, Asian, you name the diverse groups, elected officials that were on the Board of Directors of National League of Cities. We finally came up with a package that was acceptable to everyone, became the national policy of NLC. So Mr. Reyes is continuing to try and press for this change, and I totally support the change that needs to take place, because the way it's working now, you cross a border from one state to the other, you may get arrested, you may get stopped. Other states you won't. It's like going into another country, and we need to stop that under this country with one flag, with the liberties and freedoms we have. So, Mr. Reyes, I support you on this motion. Mr. Corcoran, I know, seconded the motion. But finally, pardon me? Receive and file. But finally, maybe, with the continuing pressure from this city and working with Arizona, we can work out some sense and reasonableness to this long issue that, as we saw the McCain-Kennedy bill, they tried to bring a solution. It didn't happen, but it's a dismal picture that needs to be addressed, and if we stay on it, hopefully someday, whether it's this administration or the next administration, someday we will bring about some change of the positive nature instead of what's been continuing. So, Mr. Reyes, thank you for your interest and concern on it, and I know that the Board of Directors meetings last from early morning till late at night. I think some of the other colleagues here have been on the Board of Directors of National League of Cities. It's an interesting place to be.
Thank you, Mr. Simon.
And Arizona is an interesting place in and of itself. So thank you.
Mr. Huizar for an introduction, and then we'll have Mr. Reyes close. I know there's some students that are here that you wanted to introduce.
Thank you, Mr. President. If you could indulge me to introduce a group of students from Sequoia School in Pasadena, if you could please stand up. And these students came, applause. These students came to engage in to do some civic engagement by touring Occupy Los Angeles outside, and are also touring City Hall. So what brought them is Occupy Los Angeles, and while they were here, they're going to tour City Hall as well. We welcome them to the city of Los Angeles, and if you could see yourself right now on television, this will be televised tonight on Channel 35. You could, as our president likes to say, you could go out and Twitter and Facebook yourself and do whatever you want once this comes out on television. So welcome.
Thank you very much. And welcome. It's great to have you here. Thank you. Mr. Reyes, to conclude.
Thank you, Council President. Colleagues, on your desk, you'll find an article written by Laurel Sullivan with the NPR. It says, Prison Economics Help Drive Arizona Immigration Law. I've been using the acronym FAIR, but to be very specific, it's a group called the American Legislative Exchange Council, ALEC, that's been working with a group like FAIR, in which they have this national presence. It's been a national strategy. And when you look at all the people that are outside City Hall, when you hear this mantra of the 99% and the 1%, here you have an example of a conglomerate corporations who are manipulating the state process so they can have a market to justify their investments in building prisons, and they're using immigrants, human beings, as justification for laws so they can actually invest in the building of prisons. I know this is not the America that we know, and it's important to put this out in the light of day. It's important to have this national discussion, and it's important to hold our state officials accountable for those types of actions nationally. So again, I thank you for your patience, and I thank you for support of the boycott.
Thank you very much, Mr. Reyes. We have the motion to receive and file. Please open the roll, close the roll, and tabulate the vote.
13 ayes.
That is received and filed. We will next go into closed session for item number 27, which is before us. Because this is a legal matter, unfortunately, we have to clear the council chambers. So thank you to everybody who has taken time to be here. We'll come back into open session should there be any
Excuse me, Mr. President, I believe there's cards on this item.
Oh, I'm sorry, but before that, we'll take the public comments on 27. So you guys can stay for a little bit if you want. My apologies. Richard Kearns is our first speaker, and then Don Duncan.
My name is Richard Kearns. I'm a 60-year-old gay man living with AIDS in Los Angeles for 30 years. I'm a long-term AIDS survivor and a medical cannabis activist and advocate. President Obama and Attorney General Eric Holder have said that the prosecution of medical cannabis issues is a waste of time and effort. 4 U.S. attorneys in California, Melinda Haig, Benjamin Wagner, Andrea Briot, and Laura Duffy, have decided to move ahead on their own with medical cannabis patients anyway, with medical cannabis prosecutions. What are the more important issues they could be facing? You could be helping me and the thousands of persons with AIDS living in Los Angeles and California I represent. 2 weeks ago, I was refused housing in an assisted care facility because I have AIDS. 2 years ago, another assisted care created a false emergency and evicted me and 130 of my fellow residents to gentrify. They have since reopened and tripled the rent to cater to a more affluent crowd other than the poor, the sick, and the dying. Who are the organized criminals here? How can you possibly hope to administer justice when the DEA chief, Michelle Leonard, has mandated my guilt as an article of faith rather than an article of fact? This is an ugly war. Not the first, not the last. For me, it is a war to stay alive in dignity and service. I call on the City Council to acknowledge and recognize the medical value of cannabis. I also call on the Governor and the President to recognize that. We need to stay alive. We need to reuse our resources as best we can. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Kearns. Don Duncan is our next speaker. After that is Oliver Summers.
Good morning, council members. My name is Don Duncan, the California Director of Americans for Safe Access, and I'm back this week to talk again about the impact of the PAC decision on the litigation and on the regulatory process here in Los Angeles. In a few moments, you're going to go into closed session and will not have the benefit of public input or independent legal analysis. And so I'm going to be submitting again today a letter from ASA Chief Counsel Joe Elford about the PAC decision. It's very important that you remember that the PAC decision does not preempt local regulations in their entirety. It only preempts them in that they establish licenses or use permits for medical cannabis activity. And even this decision is yet unfinal because there's there's an appeal pending before the California Supreme Court. And so remember that most of your ordinance is not preempted. And in fact, I believe a very large percentage is not preempted because our ordinance here in Los Angeles does not grant business licenses or use permits. It simply registers medical cannabis cooperatives and collectives in order to legally operate in the city. And so I think you're on pretty good ground already, and with some small changes, you're going to be fine. And so if when you go into closed session, the city attorney's office or other parties are encouraging you to ban medical cannabis patients, cooperatives, and collectives, remember this is the wrong choice. We need not take that path. If the city council votes to ban these facilities, it will be because you're making a political choice to do so, not because you're forced to do so by the courts. And so I hope you will stay open to the larger input of the legal community on the impact of the PAC decision. And let me reiterate again, this decision is absolutely not yet final. I also want to remind you that despite the federal pressure, you can move ahead with your regulatory scheme here in Los Angeles. The federal pressure is something we've seen before. Property owners were threatened in 2007 and 2008. We weathered that storm and stuck it out for the patients, and we can do it again. So I hope you'll choose to stick it out with us. Thank you very much, and I'll submit these for each of you to review.
Oliver Summers is our next speaker, then Sarah Armstrong.
Good morning.
Good morning.
My name is Oliver Summers, and Mr. Duncan was just talking about in 2007 how we weathered the storm of closings from DEA letters and things like that. I was one of those collectives that did close down in 2007 due to the original DEA intimidation letter. Since then, another collective has taken me aboard with them, and I am now part of their cooperative. Since that has happened, I will not let these people who do their job so well lose their collective like I lost mine. I've been here for 5 years speaking in front of you. I've talked to you calmly and coolly as much as possible. All of you have come and spoken to me individually, and I appreciate that. You all know that I do my job as best as possible. You guys change A's to B's, and I change with you. You guys change the B back to an A, and I change back as well. That's what I do. This is a voter-driven country. The city of LA and the state of California back in '97 voted for medical cannabis, and they did vote to have dispensaries and sales and things like that. And I look at the dichotomy of the room today of how we sit there and saw that there's a fraud commission being built so that you can look into people who are breaking the law. Well, I don't break the law, but yet somehow you guys are going to go in closed session and probably vote on trying to ban me out of doing my job. And I just want you to know that I stand here not for legalization of cannabis, not for recreational use of cannabis. I stand here because I believe in the medical use. I stand here because I take care of people such as Richard Kearns. I take care of people such as Norma Rydell, who passed away from pancreatic cancer 3 weeks ago, who came to me on her last final days and said that I was one of the most important people to help her through these hard times. And you're going to take that away from people like that. And I just want you to keep that in mind when you go into closed session, that there are people out there who deserve and need medical cannabis, and they need somebody like me to provide it to them.
Thank you very much, sir. Sarah Armstrong is our last speaker. Good morning.
Good morning. It's a pleasure to stand before you today. I haven't been here in quite a while because the focus of our efforts has shifted from this council room to the courtrooms. I'm sorry that it had to be that way. It was an expensive and painful process. However, one of the things that's emerged from this was the leadership of Jane Usher, who, despite overwhelming odds, was able to go in with a settlement judge, Judge Bendick, and make real progress. If you think herding cats is hard, get 35 lawyers with disparate interests in a room and see how well you did. It is her triumph to tell you about today, and she will tell you about it in a minute. I would like just to ask you to exhaust every avenue before you consider a ban. You have many options, and for the first time, because we will begin paying a 5% tax, you actually have some money. Additionally, there is a group of lawyers who have been working very closely on the settlement conference who will be happy to come and meet with you and talk about alternatives. Please, the sick and dying of Los Angeles need your help. If you ban, you create an enormous amount of litigation, and you take 250,000 sick people and leave them to function on the streets, which is a dangerous and terrible thing to do. You do have options. If you will only listen to us and work with us, I think we can all come to an agreement and an ordinance that will protect protect the city and protect the patients, and most importantly, protect the citizens of Los Angeles. I stand here today not because I want to see marijuana legalized or I think unregulated dispensement of cannabis in this city is a good idea. I don't think those are good ideas. I stand here because for 5 years I have dealt with people like Richard Kearns and Jamie Green who are so sick and benefit so much. Please exhaust all other options before considering a ban. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Armstrong. And with that, we will close the public hearing. Thank you, everybody, for your comments ahead of our closed session legal briefing. And with that, we'll go ahead and clear the council chambers and go into closed session.
Property theft has spiked in the area the past year due to easy access for thieves. Almost 80% of car theft occurs because of unlocked doors. Locking your doors takes a matter of seconds and can become so routine that you may forget whether you locked your doors or not. But it's worth the effort to double check. The more successful thieves are at taking items out of a car, the more chances they are going to come back to that area. Don't let our town be that area. One simple precaution is to hide or cover any valuable items when leaving your car unattended. Simple actions like these can prevent you from becoming a victim of property theft. The Los Angeles Police Department would like you to remember, lock it or lose it.
You know, it's that time of year again, to clear all that annoying dry brush from around your house. In the event of a fire, dry brush is extremely combustible and can explode. By clearing brush 200 feet from your home, you create a barrier, lessening the likelihood of spreading a fire. I'll still be here when you get back! Get the message. Be prepared.
Water in LA is limited. Every drop is precious, but we can all do our share. Use a broom instead of a hose. Wash your car only with a shut-off nozzle. Fix water leaks. Choose drought-tolerant plants and run your sprinklers based on your street address. odd addresses on Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays, and even addresses on Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Sundays before 9 a.m. or after 4 p.m. The future of LA is in our hands, and that's a good thing.
California's agriculture and environment are under attack by something which may appear harmless, but its damage is very real. The damage by invasive pests. Learn about stopping their attack at hungrypests.com, because they're here and they're hungry.
I'll be home in a minute.
Well, the party's just getting started, so hurry home, honey.
Talk to you later.
Yes, good job.
Slow down. Your family is waiting for you. Watch the road.
Hay escasez de agua en Los Ángeles. Cada gota es preciosa. Todos podemos hacer nuestra parte. Use una escoba en vez de manguera. Lave autos con válvula de cierre automático. Repare fugas. Use rociadores los días que le corresponden a su domicilio. Domicilios impares los lunes, miércoles y viernes. Domicilios pares los martes, jueves y domingos. Antes de las 9 de la mañana o después de las 4 de la tarde. El futuro está en nuestras manos. Y eso es algo bueno.
Come on, man. What's up, Bato? Where you from? Hey, what's up, Johnny? What's up? Hey, man, don't be a girl, dog. Come on. Hey, I'm your friend, right? I'm your friend, right? Come on. Hey, come on, man. Forget it. I'm going to school.
You have a choice to make. Make sure it's the right one.
I'm glad these kids made the right choice.
Police are investigating a series of bizarre and disturbing attacks that have left children in cities from coast to coast injured and fearing for their safety. As Global's Anna Gabauer tells us, the young victims were targeted simply because of the color of their hair.
They better, and while we begin with an Eyewitness News exclusive, disturbing video of a gay man being beaten in Queens.
The individual was attacked simply for his orientation, and we're just not going to tolerate it.
The word hate is just unexcusable. It's a word that shouldn't be used, and to hate somebody for the color of their skin is just not right.
It creates fear among all of the community members.
I think it's wrong how people discriminate against others just because of the way they prefer people, as in gays or just their skin color. It's wrong, and something needs to be done. A hate crime is any criminal act directed against a person based on the victim's actual or perceived nationality, religion, sexual orientation, disability, gender, and especially race. Examples of hate crimes include acts which result in injury even if the injury is slight, threats of violence that look like they can be carried out, acts which result in property damage, any criminal act or attempted criminal act, including property damage directed against public or private agencies.
The suspect can spend up to 1 year in jail, and if it's a felony, it could either be between 2 and 4 years for a prison sentence.
If you believe a hate crime has occurred or will occur, you are very much encouraged to contact the Los Angeles Police Department or the We Tip hotline. Public cooperation is often essential in solving hate crimes. We Tip hotline, 909-987-5005.
Property theft has spiked in the area the past year due to easy access for thieves. Almost 80% of car theft occurs because of unlocked doors. Locking your doors takes a matter of seconds and can become so routine that you may forget whether you locked your doors or not. But it's worth the effort to double check. The more successful thieves are at taking items out of a car, the more chances they are going to come back to that area. Don't let our town be that area. One simple precaution is to hide or cover any valuable items when leaving your car unattended. Simple actions like these can prevent you from becoming a victim of property theft. The Los Angeles Police Department would like you to remember, lock it or lose it.
LA is limited. Every drop is precious, but we can all do our share. Use a broom instead of a hose. Wash your car only with a shutoff nozzle. Fix water leaks. Choose drought-tolerant plants and run your sprinklers based on your street address. Odd addresses on Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays. And even addresses on Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Sundays before 9 a.m. or after 4 p.m. The future of LA is in our hands, and that's a good thing.
Come on, man. What's up, Bato? Where you from? Hey, what's up, Johnny? What's up? Hey, come here. Man, don't be a girl, dog. Come on. Hey, I'm your friend, right? I'm your friend, right? Come on. Hey, come on, man. Forget it. I'm going to school.
You have a choice to make. Make sure it's the right one.
I'm glad these kids made the right choice.
property theft has spiked in the area the past year due to easy access for thieves. Almost 80% of car theft occurs because of unlocked doors. Locking your doors takes a matter of seconds and can become so routine that you may forget whether you locked your doors or not. But it's worth the effort to double check. The more successful thieves are at taking items out of a car, the more chances they are going to come back to that area. Don't let our town be that area. One simple precaution is to hide or cover any valuable items when leaving your car unattended. Simple actions like these can prevent you from becoming a victim of property theft. The Los Angeles Police Department would like you to remember, lock it or lose it.
Welcome back to open session of the Los Angeles City Council. We had a discussion that does not require any open session action. It was agendized just for discussion, and that's what we had in our closed session. As such, let's go to the next order of business, please.
Council has motions for posting and referral.
Those are posted and referred.
There are excuses on the desk. Councilmember Englander requests to leave at 12 on October 21st for city business. A motion is required.
Okay. What does that take us down to? Take us down to...
That would take council down to 11 members. 11
members. Okay, I'll move that. Mr. Reyes seconds. Without objection, that is granted. Next excuse.
Councilmember Parks requests to be excused on October 28th for city business. A motion is required.
All right, I'll move that as well. Without objection.
That clears the desk.
Okay, it's announcements. Wanted to announce, I know a number of council members were there this morning with Israeli Consul General and others as Gilad Shalit was returned home to his family in Israel after 5 years in captivity. We want to welcome him home. Thank you to Mr. Koretz and Mr. Zion and others who have taken positions over the years to remember him, to continue to remember him, and we thank you for being there this morning. Other announcements, colleagues? Anybody have about committees or anything else? Do we have any adjourning motions today, colleagues? Seeing none, Madam Clerk, will you please call the roll? Okay, this meeting of the Los Angeles City Council is adjourned. We'll next be in session tomorrow, Wednesday, October 19th, 2011. Have a great day. Courage.